right, good evening. It is 7:02. I'm going to call the meeting of April 5th, 2022, East Lyme Inland Wetlands Agency to order. We'll start with announcing our members. We have Phyllis Berger, Don Fimminster, I'm Kristen Chantrell, Diane Garner, Sam Sims, and Gregory McIntyre. And then we have our Gary Gaishel, our Inland Wetlands agent, present today, and our ex officio, Ann Chichello, tonight. And we're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Len Salter as well. Thank you.
Hi. Oh, we do, sorry, yeah, we have, so, I'm sorry, you're an alternate, right, Len? And
Nancy Claw is an alternate. Len has not been appointed yet, as far as I know. Am I correct? Yeah. So, yeah, so he's just
got it.
watching everything tonight, observing.
Okay, perfect. Oh, and we seated Nancy, sorry, everyone's
Yeah.
we seated Diane tonight. Okay.
Great.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag
of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so we're going to start with public delegation. Public delegations is the time when members of the public are invited to speak to the commission about certain matters, issues, or concerns related to approved wetland permits and in-house proposals, or general topics of discussion are open to comment. Agenda items, referrals, applications subject to a decision by the commission, a public hearing, or in litigation may not be discussed. Okay. See no one from the public. No public hearing today. So moving on, acceptance of minutes, the meeting minutes of March 1st, 2022, regular meeting. Any comments to those, discussion? Would anybody like to approve the minutes of March 1st?
I move we accept the minutes for March 1st.
Do I hear a second? A second. All those approved? Everybody? Okay, thank you.
Can I just make a comment? You have to be here for...
I know, I read the minutes.
No, you didn't second, did you?
No, and I didn't second it, no.
No, you have to... I don't know if the person next to you was
Oh,
here.
yeah, yeah.
I was here
Oh, you were here?
in the last. I was sitting right there.
It's true, she was.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So moving on to our ex officio report, Ann.
Hi, Ann Chichello. On the Board of Selectmen in the past month, we've been doing a lot of budget meetings just to get the town budget in order, and also heard from the Board of Ed. I know the Board of Finance, I think, was deliberating last night on the budget for the town. Also, there was a subcommittee formed, I think I spoke about this last month, for the ARP funds, and we presented to the Board of Selectmen, it was March 16th, and recommended funding for the town department projects and for nonprofits and small businesses. So tomorrow at the Board of Selectmen, they will take a vote on all the appropriations that were made by the subcommittee. And then from there, it will go to the Board of Finance and then to town meeting. So that's what's going on with the ARP funds. Also, Phyllis, I think you had asked about the Riverhead Cemetery, and East Lyme took ownership of the cemetery, and that was done by town meeting on March 16th, 2022. The only other thing we have really is like upcoming dates for local events. April 23rd is a Niantic Boardwalk 5K. May 21st is a Touch a Truck. June 10th is a Charlie's Run. July 16th is Celebrate East Lyme, which we're very excited to have again after COVID. July 6th at McCook's. Wednesday, we'll start the Wednesday concert series. And July 8th is the Friday concert series begin. And on March 30th, the beach passes went on sale. So that's pretty much it for the Board of Selectmen. Are there any questions?
So what are they going to do with the cemetery? Just maintain it?
So what happens is East Lyme has been maintaining the cemetery for years, but they didn't have ownership to it. So basically now we have title and ownership to the property.
Okay.
But we just, I guess they have been maintaining it. It's just Lyme wanted to take title to it.
Interesting.
And they'll continue maintaining it if they have to. Any other questions?
No, thanks for your report.
Sure.
All right, new business, application of the Town of East Lyme Public Works application for a general permit to conduct regular maintenance along town-owned public rights-of-way.
Yes, so at the last meeting, this Alex Close, our town engineer, was present and gave you an overview of the proposed project. Basically, it's for all our stormwater outfalls, an area of roughly 25 feet from the inlet and outlet. We're asking basically for a permit to maintain those areas for our stormwater. This is basically a continuance of the previous permit that we issued for 20 years. Every 10 years, we have to reapply for the permit. I think we heard in the last meeting, Alex indicated that it looked like this may have lapsed a bit. So we're just bringing things up to date. Moving forward.
So can you remind me, because in the minutes it said we approved the application last
Yes.
meeting.
And I would be looking for a motion to approve the application again because an item has to remain on the agenda for 15 days. If there is a 15-day
Oh,
appeal period, or petition period.
Got it.
One is sent to public hearing. So technically, the vote did not count.
got it, okay. So would anybody like to make a new vote?
That's to pass the application, accept the application.
Yes, this is for the East Lyme Public Works applicant. Yes.
I'll make a motion to approve, to accept the application.
Thank you, Sam. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Everybody, okay? All right, so then our next one is the application of Paths and Construction LLC, application to maintain 2 Conex boxes, steel shipping containers to store equipment. Alfred H. Smith, owner of 297 Boston Post Road, assessors map 31.1, lot number 57.
I'm good, don't worry about it. I can see through Gary's head, I'm good.
Sorry about that.
Not much of
Good evening, members of the Commission. Ted Harris, 351 Main Street, Niantic, representing the applicant this evening. When we last were here, excuse me, when we last were here, there was a question of whether notice was required to DEEP as well as the local water company. I'll explain why, but it is not. The Aquifer Protection Agency, when it came into being, was required to develop influence areas for public water supplies, and that basically over a 5-year period of testing, they came up with the Aquifer Protection Areas, which is published by DEEP as well as on our GIS system. And this parcel is outside that area, so by that item alone, there is no requirement to notify the public water supplier or DEEP. Beyond that, I looked at the statute that requires this type of notice, and it only requires it when there's an application within a wetland or a water course. So either way, that notice is not required. I have completed that application with respect to this item and others, and it is in your packet as revised application. Just a little more background if you'd like. East Lyme did have an aquifer protection district in the zoning regulations, and that was just based on assumed influence areas to wells. Upon the scientific testing and the Aquifer Protection Agency, that district was repealed, and the zoning regulations also repealed that were applicable to that district. So now the Aquifer Protection Agency is a sole agency that dictates uses in influence areas to public water supplies. Another question that the commission had was the proximity to wetlands. We did locate a wetland demarcation plan. Unfortunately, some of the markings stopped, but scaling that off with the scale, we're at least 20 feet from the wetland area. So very simply, what we're requesting tonight is to maintain those two convex boxes in their present location. And as you noted last meeting, it allows the site to be kept much cleaner with those boxes on site and watertight. I'm happy to answer any questions.
I have a question for
Sure.
Gary. In February, we had discussed that the permit had expired. Okay. And now Pass Construction has come in with an application for these two structures. Okay. So shouldn't we have two applications? One to redo the permit to start it, and then another one for the structures?
Oh, go ahead.
I believe the applicant is going to abandon the previous use, or the stockpile use, and they're no longer going to stockpile material on the site.
Or process material. I mentioned that at our initial presentation.
Okay, so then my second question, those two structures are already there.
Existing, yes.
So I'm just concerned that this is the second time this year that we've had a situation where applicant has come in and there was already the structure there and you said, oh, just leave it. You know, I don't want to get us into a position where we're approving things after the fact. I mean, both of the individuals or the applications were business people who know how things go. So, you know, should those be moved away from the wetland?
That's
Yeah.
your discretion. If you think they need to be moved or relocated further from the wetland. What I was attempting to do was address a violation issue, or at least what I thought was a violation regarding the outside storage of equipment and material. And in response to that, the applicant is making application for the existing boxes. So in theory, my order that I initially issued covered that. Unfortunately, we failed to hold a show cause hearing, which would have given the applicant their due process, and therefore the order essentially fails. So I was going in an attempt to either reissue the order or rectify the situation. We worked with the applicant, and we've got to this point where we are now, where they're making application to correct the situation for the existing Conex boxes. Now, if the agency wishes those boxes to be moved or relocated to another area that's satisfactory within the upland, then we could certainly.
I would like to point out that the boxes are 40 feet long and the access point to those boxes is another 40 feet from the wetland.
There's also a structure in between the two Conex boxes. Is that
Steel can't be
Oh,
is that something that warrants permitting, or is that
What is it again?
there's like a steel roof structure in between the two Conex boxes?
Well, it's not necessarily part of the footprint that's on the ground. I mean, you could just connect the two Conex boxes and say that the total footprint is being, I guess, disturbed with impervious surface.
Yeah, because there's a roof connecting between the two, so
Correct.
so that should technically be a part of this as well.
You can add it
Yes.
as
I agree.
included as part of the.
Did we have a walkthrough on Saturday? I was out of town, I missed it. If we did.
Yeah,
We did.
Yeah.
4 of us that went.
So my understanding is that the,
It's wider
the end of the Connex boxes is 20 feet from the upland review area, but they're also 132 feet from the water?
Correct. That was based on scaling off the GIS.
Sure. Yeah,
But they
apologize for not making the walkthrough.
Actually,
Town.
And aerial photographs.
yeah, they're pretty far away from the actual lake. There are wetlands
Right.
pretty directly behind it. And I mean, those Connex boxes have obviously been there for a very long time. Right. I mean,
Yes.
Well, a couple of years.
960 square feet. How many? I don't know.
2 to 4.
Say 6.
Oh, really?
The first one's there about 5 years ago.
one looks more recent than the other. One
Yeah,
is,
the one on the right.
yeah. So, for purposes of this application, we are only considering the Connex boxes and that structure in between,
Correct.
just so we're all clear.
So I have a question. So we're only considering the placement of them, correct? 'Cause
Correct.
When we were out there looking at them, we were noticing all the chipping paint and everything falling off of them. And we wondered, you know, if that is a concern about all this stuff getting into the waterways.
Well, you could certainly make a condition of this that we repaint them and scrape them or repaint them. And
Because there was like, you know, big chunks of peeling paint. It wasn't little tiny bits.
we certainly have no problem with painting them and stabilizing the surface.
Do appreciate that, because that was definitely a concern.
Yeah. That's not a problem.
Any other discussion? I mean, honestly, to remove those boxes would cause quite a disruption,
And more disturbance.
right? Although, I mean,
I do want to support Phyllis in her point that,
right,
you know, we don't want to be continuously catching up and approving things from behind.
right.
So there will come a point when somebody comes to us for approval from behind and we say no. I'm not sure this is the point, but at some point, that could well happen.
Right, yeah, I mean, because both containers are on a slope directing down towards the wetland. So, I mean, ideally, it would have sloped away from it. I mean, I think it could have been a little bit in a better location, but I think at this point, to disturb all that would be more detrimental than beneficial.
Agreed.
Yeah,
Or regrade it to
right,
Yeah.
right,
That would amount to fill, basically.
yeah.
So, yeah. So are we in a position to call for a vote?
You can vote on this tonight, if you haven't been on it for 15 days. Still, we're coming up on the end of our, we're midway in our 65 days from the receipt, so got 35 days left. You have additional time if you want additional time, if you're ready to vote. Certainly you vote. Sounds like there may be a few conditions here, short of moving the boxes, but particularly maintaining and scraping and painting the Connex boxes. I guess in terms of scraping, we don't want to obviously scrape directly onto the ground, so
Mhm.
we follow some best management practices there.
Clean up.
Do you remember what was the covered structure in between what the flooring was? What underneath the structure in between the two Connex boxes? Is it gravel? Was it gravel?
That's what I thought it was,
I just don't remember.
Yeah, gravel.
Yeah.
but it was just a canopy. And they threw it up there probably to keep things dry.
Yeah. That's a little permanent. All right, does anyone want to make a motion?
So all you want to do is clean up the paint then? You don't want to...
Well, yeah, so the I think at this point, moving those boxes, because they're
Yeah,
huge,
I totally agree.
right, so I think, maintaining those, because they are so close to the wetland, is important. I mean, the paint
Just the
chips are
surface.
huge, yeah, to paint
Maintain
them
the
and
surface.
maintain them, make sure that the,
You can like just encapsulate with no more paint. I mean,
Yeah. yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we don't want it to, start causing a problem to the wetlands,
Correct.
you know, so we need to make sure that it's maintained where it is, because it is so close.
I mean, they can maintain the boxes, clean them up, and paint them, but long-term...
One of them was
maintenance,
fine, the other one was,
long-term maintenance, I think it would be like a house or any other type of structure, you have to maintain it.
Eventually, falls apart.
At some point, I mean, we do have a blight ordinance now that maybe enacted, not in this particular case. Long-term maintenance is really up to the applicant.
right, I mean, I think as far as we're concerned now, there is just a lot of shipping paint. If we can clean that up as a condition of allowing it to stay in that location, I'd be okay with that.
Clean up the paint, maintenance of the surface of the conex boxes. Like to make a motion to approve the permit from past construction on the conditions that the paint is cleaned up on the ground around the area, and maintenance. They would mind maintaining the surface of the conex boxes for reasonable period of time to prevent further deterioration. Paint.
Do I hear a second?
Second?
Diane seconded that. All those in favor?
Okay.
All those opposed?
I love getting quite fond of hearing about this every meeting, you know. Pretty soon I'll have all the details memorized. You know. Is this where we, if we have questions for you, is this a good place to do that?
So, you did have, in favor, opposed,
Okay. Yep.
the record motion passes.
So pending applications, none. Old business, none. So chairman's report, I do actually have some stuff.
Thank you.
Thanks. So Gary and I met with a few members of the Plan of Conservation and Development, the POCD. They put this plan together in 2020. And it was probably the first meeting of many, I hope. This plan, I think, is really, really good. There's a lot of input from people from all over town. But what they did, which I think is amazing, an incredible amount of work, is they, line by line, put together different ways that recommendations on how we can apply the Plan of Conservation Development to the town.
Oh, okay.
And
Like through committees.
through committees. There's town departments, there's committees, and then there's community groups. And we are the dark blue column. You can't really read what we are. But this is 30 pages long of line items of really great ideas to help put into place the Plan of Conservation and Development. So I went through this. I have, there's a few things I think would be applicable to our commission that I think that we could start looking into.
Like our to-do list.
Basically, yeah. And what they plan to do is then kind of highlight, as we all start working together to to really live by this plan, how, kind of get like a community involvement and get people excited about it. It's even as simple as planting trees and, having a garden group and just little plans and then big plans. So I think as we're considering going through our regulations, that there's a few things in here that I think we should definitely discuss. Even something, let's see, it talks a lot about kind of when we consider applications to be informed if it's in a flood prone area, if it's in, for example, the Latimer Brook watershed, if it's an aquifer protection zone. I don't know if there's currently any, if there's any obligation for us to know that right now when we get an application.
Well, I think as we just heard in the last application regarding the aquifer protection,
Right.
the activities directly in water course or wetlands, do they have to support to deep? And that's if the site is in the overlay.
Right. And that's because you're telling them to go look at that? How do they know? How would an applicant know if they're in an aquifer protection zone?
You're gonna look at the zoning map.
Okay.
And those overlay zones are on the zoning map. So we initially, prior to the aquifer protection area overlays, we had the primary and secondary overlay zones. These were much larger. They're shown on this map in this room. To your left, there's two lines. There's a dark blue line and a large blue line. You'll see it passes through Howard Lake. It starts there. Those are the primary and secondary. Those are what Mr. Harris was saying has been repealed.
Okay.
And then an updated map would show the aquifer protection areas, which are primarily essentially the direct recharge areas for the municipal water supply. So it's a little different than it's not where these primary and secondary aquifers really were more watershed based overlays, including all of the watershed, not just the direct recharge. So I think the theory was that might have been a little overburdensome, particularly for a residential area, but again, it's a residential area, there's not much else going on out there, so it wasn't really adversely impacting anything either. What I will note is because of the repeal of that, there are properties within our commercial districts, particularly the old Holdridges or what was the Granite that had the fire, and we're, I think, currently rebuilding what was the existing structure. That location in particular is a good example of what was previously in a zone where you could not have underground storage tanks or a gas station pop up. And now it's no longer inside any aquifer protection zone, so it's free market, if you will. So a gas station could then be proposed to locate there. So from that perspective, I see that as an issue. And primarily because that location is actually closer, than out by Powers Lake, if you will, right? So you have less distance for that water to get renovated as it makes its way to the ground. So I think you'll see in the POCD matrix, there might have been recommendations for zoning to kind of relook at that and kind of look more at a watershed-based overlay again, even or maybe expand the existing one. But we'll see where that goes.
Okay. Yeah, I think there's some opportunities here for us to. I also noticed the bus garage location was on here, just saying. I'm not gonna let that go.
But that being said, it was noted, it was so much so that even a committee pointed it out. Right?
Yeah,
It's
right.
kind of an important thing, I think, for someone somewhere.
It's important
I
for
don't know
me.
exactly, but it was something we discussed as a committee, and it made its way into that document. So certainly we want to try to address it.
Yeah, right. So I think if anyone wants to take a look at this, we can definitely provide a copy, right? I mean, I don't know where this list exists.
So that's the POCD? Oh,
Sam's got it.
Yeah, it's on the East Lyme Town Hall website.
Perfect. It takes some time to go through, and there's a lot here. But I think if we can, as a group, maybe just tackle a few of them and try and...
It may be easier to, rather than trying to sift through all of that, is just go to the natural resource chapter in the POCD, because the recommendations are there as well.
There you go.
And
Yeah.
kind of narrow it in. You won't be sifting through necessarily transportation issues, social,
Mhm.
civic,
Farming.
cultural issues, farming, I don't know, whatever.
Right.
The senior center.
Yes,
stuff.
there's yeah, right.
Unless that does interest you.
So yeah, I know we don't all have a lot of free time, but definitely something to look at. I know we're gonna have ongoing meetings.
Yeah, so the intent is that the POCD subcommittee meeting, Michelle really wants as an implementation committee, trying to basically assist other boards and commissions in fulfilling what they told us they want, right? And that's where these recommendations came from. We just didn't pull them out of thin air. We consulted the boards and commissions who were experts in their field. With that, we just want to support that, and from the planning side, we support wetlands with whatever endeavor you guys want to undertake. Maybe it is the bus lot. That said, there'll be multiple meetings, and I know between this commission meeting once a month and the site walk, I'm sure Kristen would love some help. And everyone is welcome to public meetings, so we meet once a month, the half hour before the planning commission meeting is the POCD subcommittee across the hall. So those are maybe the third Tuesday of the month. Right, this is the second.
This is the first Tuesday.
Sorry, it'd be the second Tuesday of the month.
Yeah, so it's good. I was excited talking with everybody and going through this. They spent a lot of time, and I think every single idea in here is a really good idea. So if we can even just get a couple to happen, I think that would be awesome. So that's some homework for you guys. So that being said, too, Greg and I were going to look at the regulations a bit. This month was an interesting month for us, so I did not look at them. But seeing this, I want to take a new look at the regulations, and I think maybe the town regulations.
Okay.
Yeah, to maybe to work on those a bit, to clarify some things and.
So I know you were at the last meeting, I think, but I handed out, and so if you need a hard copy, these were a set of draft regulations that the previous subcommittee that the draft agency had drafted and put together.
Yes.
So we're kind of, I'm presenting that to you for your input.
You could email me that, or is this it?
This is it, yeah. So
Okay, I'll get a copy.
Comparing that to our current regs.
and like defining the minor, intermediate, regulated activity. I
Okay.
think those are key changes. Yeah, just a little bit more clarification and.
My primary goal is really to be clear about what has to be submitted, mainly for that to constitute that complete application. Because we've gotten a number of applications, in my opinion, are borderline complete.
Yeah, you kept saying it.
Because of
Drag it
the
out.
litigious nature of land use, it helps if we're as clear as we can be and get the information, as much information as we need to make a good decision, right? That's the goal. So,
It would be helpful if we discuss with you about this, because you seem like your experience just dealing with all these things, you already know the things that people were running into already.
well, after 13 years of practice
Yeah.
with these regulations, kind of, some of these are my suggestions.
Oh, right.
It does mirror the town of Wilton's regulations in particular.
Okay.
I, if you will, grew up under those in the sense that when I first started my career, I was working for that town. And I found that these work really well in that town, and it's roughly 20,000, 25,000 people. So it's about the same size, it's a little further inland, but it worked well. So it's just it's a suggestion. We can go any way, but yeah, in terms of the upland review area, you can maintain that at 300 feet. You can increase it, you can decrease it, whatever you'd like to do. But here's a suggestion for kind of laying out complete applications. Also giving the public some expectation is what can I expect the inland wetland agent to approve? When do I need to go to a commission meeting? It's kind of a big ominous thing. Any developer is like, well, when do I need to? I don't want to go to a commission if I don't have to, right? That's the first thing they're thinking of. I don't bite, but just the 65 days, I get it. But, public, but that'll resolve a lot of kerfuffle that I have to contend with.
Well, these limits, those are state like reg things, right, for times and stuff, or is this something the
Yes,
town put
the-
in? Yeah,
the
that's why
times
we're
we can't-
working on
Yes, we still have to follow the statutes, so
Yes,
there's
we
a
do.
process.
That's helpful.
Yeah.
Don't get too capricious.
And with that, May 2nd, we're having a clear Center for Land Use Education Research, we have a workshop here. If you're interested in going, just let Jen know.
Yeah.
Yeah, sooner than later if you haven't responded, because she
Yeah,
opened it
she-
to other towns.
Yes,
I did.
we have a pretty full room so far. We have 35 plus people attending. So, give you some.
So can we add this as an item to the agenda for next meeting?
Or,
Regulation, yeah,
slash-
/ POCD incorporation, yeah. Just want to make sure it stays on our radar so we continue to talk about it, especially since it's not super busy right now. Although I hope I didn't just jinx us. Also, so I don't know if this is to discuss under Chairman's report or not, but I received a letter from somebody that, well, from the East Lyme Commission for the Conservation of Natural Resources to the East Lyme Inland Wetlands Agency
Okay.
about the Bride Brook. It was received at Town Hall.
Yes, that's been addressed.
I don't think we've heard about this.
I'll be happy to explain.
Yeah. Do you want to do that in your report? Should I move on?
Yeah, we
To-
just might as well move into my report.
Okay. Yep.
Okay, so you can, it might be easier just to read that so that agencies can play with what that report is, but Eric Thomas of Connecticut DEP received a notification from a couple guys in the field from marine fisheries who were checking the fish ladder over at Pride Lake. As they were observing that, they walked across the street and checked this, I guess, on the stream and noticed turbid water running into the stream from an unnamed tributary. They followed the tributary up to the property on North Bridle Road, which of course is currently under construction. It's been cleared by past construction here tonight. I immediately contacted Mr. Pizzalia. He and I walked the site, looked for any breaches in the silt fence. We found one area where there was a breach and it looked like turbid water had spilled over onto the adjacent neighboring lot, but didn't make it any further beyond that as it was staining on the snow. So the next day, I went back to Mr. Thomas and said, can you please provide me an aerial or a map of where this spot, I was unable to find the location. He then sent me an aerial, the exact location. This was the cleared area, I guess, further north on his site, up past the tree line. It was the area where we had congregated when we did our site walk initially.
The area where we want to do a little test pit.
The area where, yes, Kristen wanted to do it.
Still do.
Still wants to do a test pit. There was a breach in that silt fence. He had silt fence up there. So, however, I still looking at the site conditions, I couldn't figure out where that breach actually really occurred, if and how much, because the leaf litter on the ground wasn't really pushed or moved out of the way. There was no sedimentation deposits on the leaf litter that suggested a breach. Art Carlson and I subsequently went out to the site, back to the same area. And what looks like an area of stone was running water coming out from underneath it. And the question is, does that intermittent spring, stream, what is that? Or is it not? Is it just the high groundwater, it's leaking off after the rain event? So I would have to go back. And
Is this
check.
in that same location?
It's in the same, yes, that very, it's actually on the south end of that cleared area.
And water was coming underneath
Well,
rocks,
there's
it looked like.
rocks that were
Yeah.
clearly pushed and piled, so it's hard to say, is it water that got trapped, where is the water coming from? Clearly it was groundwater leaking out the ground and discharging into that stream. And so my thought was any overflow that breached the silt fence maybe made its way into that little channel, out into the stream and then down.
So,
In the interim though, Mr. Pizzalia has since fixed the silt fence and the silt fence is secure.
but we don't know that that's where it was coming from. So the problem hasn't necessarily been alleviated.
I can go back and take, my opinion, has been rectified because Deep has not been back calling me. This has to be fixed. Because I know that they're out there frequently checking.
Yeah, because it's a super important,
Run. Right.
yes.
So as they have indicated in their letter to us, so in the process of all of this, the reason you got a letter from the Natural Resources Commission is Don DeLillo sits on that agency. Apparently, Mr. Thomas felt that it was appropriate to email Mr. Danila the issue because he is a fisheries biologist, retired, and maybe had some way of getting in touch with you quicker than phone call. So that said, we are aware of it. We're looking at it. I don't know if I can go back. I'm still trying to pursue whether or not we can get a test bid or do a hole somewhere out there. We do have some pending litigation that I think that in discussions with Mr. Pazaya, we would like to maybe try to resolve.
For that property? Okay,
So that may require an executive session.
okay.
So with that, I have to contact town attorney and go down that road and speak with Mr. Siri. Advise him that that's something we're going to entertain. Again, I'll look to hear from his attorney and see if that's what I want to go.
Should I read this into the record?
You're more than welcome to, yes.
Okay, I'm just going to do that real quick. All right, so this is to the East Lyme Inland Wetlands Agency from the East Lyme Commission for the Conservation of Natural Resources, dated February 15th, 2023. Obviously, a typo, 2022. Failure of North Bridebrook Housing Development to control erosion. The East Lyme Commission for the Conservation of Natural Resources would like to express its concern over a recent report concerning the ongoing development known as Brookside Apartments, an affordable housing development that is being constructed by Paz and Construction, LLC, at 90 North Bridebrook Road. The town of East Lyme is very fortunate to host one of the largest spawning runs in southern New England of the alewife, an androgynous herring whose adults mostly live in salt water but ascend streams to spawn in fresh water. This spawning migration occurs in Bridebrook, where recent annual estimates show a range of about 68 to 354,000 adult alewives moving upstream from the Long Island Sound during March through early June to spawn in Bride Lake. After spending some months within the lake, hundreds of thousands of their juvenile progeny emigrate from downstream to the Sound from late summer through fall. This fish is a significant natural resource that must be protected. During the public hearing for this development that was held remotely by the East Lyme Zoning Commission on November 19th, 2020, one of our members spoke about the importance of this alewife spawning run and the need to protect Bridebrook from pollution by this development. Unfortunately, our commission recently learned through a contact with the Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, DEEP, that deep fisheries biologists monitoring the start of the alewife spawning run observed muddy water entering Bridebrook via a tributary passing through the apartment development. In their opinion, the sediments resulted from failed erosion control measures in the middle of the Brookside Apartments construction site, as upstream from the confluence with the tributary, Bridebrook itself was running clear right up to the lake outlet. We are aware that the East Lyme Inland Wetlands agent, Mr. Gary Gaishel, was informed about this matter and has undertaken an investigation. At the time of this writing, we have not received updates about the situation nor any resolutions. Our commission is unanimous that the town of East Lyme needs to protect this ecologically valuable fishery resource. The management of this housing development must be held accountable for their failure to maintain sound practices and erosion control. We also feel that the stormwater plan for this development should undergo further scrutiny by town staff to prevent or limit other sources of pollution, for example, petroleum products, heavy metals, pet waste, fertilizers, and other nutrients, from entering Bridebrook in the future once this development is completed and its residents move in. Arthur Carlson, Chairman, Penny Heller, Secretary, Laura Ashburn, Mark Christensen, Donald Danila, Harvard Beeman, and Marjorie Meekoff. Okay, so since this has been written, the town is looking into it and investigating. It has been remediated thus far with continued
To the best
monitoring.
of my knowledge, the erosion issue has been mitigated.
Okay.
As far as whether or not that's a former wetland or watercourse remains to be seen. I'm still uncertain that it is. I go back out there with an auger,
Is that
Okay.
that's the lake on the prison property?
Bride Lake is on the prison property, yes. So, moving on.
Yep.
Administrative permits issued, I just issued one for 31 Man Warren Road, a 3-season room porch. I had pending, it was pending from the last meeting, I needed to review and issue 6 Mammocock. That was a new house that went, that they're applying for. Foundation went in. I'm not sure how they received the foundation permit without me first issuing the wetlands permit. So that was an internal issue. And since mitigated, I think most of you may already know, approximately 3 weeks ago, our chief building official resigned. So those issues are, we're still dealing with some of the older issues. Anyway, moving on my desk is 3 Wildwood Drive. It's an application for a new house within 300 feet of a wetland, 156 Upper Patagonia. It's a second floor expansion, so it's just cantilevered over and happens to be within 300 feet of a water course. Enforcement actions. I got a complaint regarding 396 Boston Post Road. I took a look. Some pictures here. Looks like the landowner just clearing, upgrading of a wetland and water course. See pictures. So I will be pursuing this to find out what exactly the landowner is proposing to do. The area is disturbed and the soils are bare. They need stabilization. Doesn't look like it adversely impacted the wetlands because they disturbed into it. Kind of looks like they took out woody debris and the understory and created just a clear what would be a future lawn area. But again, it looks like there's a catch basin outlet on the west side of Boston Post Road, or rather the south side of Boston Post Road. That discharges, I think, creates the water course that runs through the side yard of this
Yeah, it looks like a little stream
home.
on that stream, but
You can see it.
you had this.
I have an aerial of the subject property. You can see it clearly. It's that dark line on the adjacent parcel.
Oh.
It cuts through the little L on his piece.
Is this like on the side of the property?
Yes.
Okay.
Is that Dean Road? Is it the corner of, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just
Yeah.
Just to the right of the
Yeah,
corner there, yeah.
seen that.
Yeah.
So I am pursuing that. I'll be sending them correspondence at least for a notice of violation. So if we can't get them in to find out what kind of landscaping, what their
So it's
intention.
over here.
That's all I have as of now for enforcement. Just as an aside, Rocky Neck Village, which is on the west end of town, they've got they were issued their last CO for the residential units. The clubhouse, if you will, has not yet been CO'd. It's the last structure to get CO'd. Trying to work with the building official on holding off a little bit on that until we get the rest of the site stabilized. We still have silver fabric in the detention basin, which I've been asking probably for the last 6 months to 8 months to be removed, and a number of things, understanding that seasonal issues with growing grass, but they finished all of their grading, so they just need to clean the site up, file grading, loaming, seed, and I'm just nervous that that may not go forward, so that may turn into an enforcement action. Although we're working with the town attorney and the zoning official, trying to get that up.
What about
It's-
across from the transfer station, the dump? You know, there's very large piles there. It's well within 100 feet of water.
On the Weiss property.
Yeah.
Are there new piles?
Well, they
There's
come,
stone piles.
they come and go, right? I mean, they weren't there, then there were big piles, and then they kind of dwindling down again, and yeah, who knows what they're doing there? They're not really building anything.
I don't know if those are, I can reach out to Mr. Weiss to find out what the piles of material are being used for, or if he's just using it as a staging area to move material for other properties. The subdivision's been approved, we've issued a wetland permit for the subdivision. It's just a matter of selling lots, building houses.
I mean,
I
does
can
it,
understand you could bring like stone, and you might need that for
Oh, no, these are huge piles of dirt and rock.
dirt.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree
Yeah.
completely.
I mean-
It seems like he's processing it there.
Yeah,
yeah,
filtering it or sieving it or whatever they do.
So I will pursue that as well. But I think he's well familiar with the agency's position on what's going on.
And speaking of enforcement, the property we visited on the site walk this week, is it a zoning issue that could clean that up? I mean, there's trucks parked basically over wetlands that are,
I think I can pursue it with Bill, and I think there is a zoning matter there. Part of the issue, I do know that Mr. Frizzelli would argue that the use, the existing use, whatever that is exactly, I'm not sure. It looks like it's just a storage of construction equipment.
it's a graveyard for construction equipment. Yeah.
He's gonna argue that that use has been in place and can continue, even though it's as he would call it, pre-existing non-conforming use. That would be an uphill battle necessarily maybe for Bill to fight. Bill would have to demonstrate that the use was not in fact a pre-existing non-conforming use and in violation of the regulations.
Pre-existing for how long? Is there a time?
It would be, they would look back and say, if he can demonstrate that the use of that property has been what it is as far as back as Al Smith was using it, right? Prior to the enactment of regulation, then he could claim that it was a pre-existing non-conforming use.
So how many years was that?
so what is he, like grandfathered in?
That would be the,
Kinda is.
the latest term is grandfathered in, May 4th, 1954. That's when zoning regulations were adopted in East Lyme. So I would argue that he'd have to prove. Now the question is, where would Bill would be saying that the construction use or the commercial use was not permitted within the zone ever, I guess, and he'd have to demonstrate that he had the use prior to 1954. That would be the scenario that could probably happen. So it is up to Mr. Mulholland's discretion whether or not to enforce. So I'll bring it to his attention that
I mean, it's cringeworthy going on that property.
We've been there a lot.
Yeah.
the question
clean
is,
it up.
should the property, clean it up or be improved to a point where it looks clean, I guess. I don't know. Should they have a gravel drive instead of just the dirt? If they're going to continue to bring vehicles in and out of there. Because there's just rutting and more dirt.
Mhm.
It out and it's just moving dirt in a circle.
Around the pile of,
Um,
the permitted pile.
So I'll work with zoning to try to get that rectified, and hopefully Mr. Frizzelli won't do anything in violation of the wetland regulations from here on out.
So in order to put those structures there, did he have to go to the building department, or did he just randomly?
Those,
zip it in?
those, I do not believe they have building permits. Now, we're permitting them as structures, so Mr. Mulholland, I believe, would need a zoning permit for those structures.
So,
That's how I'm going to approach that, say, Bill, there's two structures, they're unpermitted. Now, if he wants to argue that, now, he did say, we heard tonight that they've been there from anywhere from 3 to 6 years.
doesn't matter.
If the structure was not issued a zoning permit and it's been in place for 3 years or longer, it can stay, even if it's a violation of the setback.
Hmm.
But you're gonna have to demonstrate that as the landowner that that's when I bought the shed. Setback.
So then he's not paying taxes on that either.
Correct.
'Cause nobody knows
It's
about
not
it.
Building permit, so if there's any structure under 200 square feet does not require a building permit However, it does require a zoning permit and or a wetland permit if it's in the upland area. That said, that's the only notification that the assessor would get that there's a structure to tax. So, yes, he's benefited from their existence untaxed. However, at least from this perspective, that said, I do know that the tax assessor has been pursuing design construction in regards to its equipment and where it's located during the calendar year, because they can tax the equipment, so she's tracking this stuff. So I think she may be taxing those boxes. And there are cases where we have the assessors taxing a particular structure or use, or, for instance, let's say it's an accessory dwelling unit. Good example, they may have it down and being taxed as such, but in the building records, that unit doesn't exist. Because no one applied for a permit or whatever the case may be, so that usually only comes to its head when the property is sold and transferred and someone lives at home and says there's no permit for this structure. That's otherwise.
Gary,
Yeah.
Yes.
would you mind if, this gentleman asked a question? He may end up being on the commissioner. Are you guys okay with that?
Sure.
Just give your name.
I just want to play, and get in there and stuff. Thank you, appreciate it. Nice to meet you, shaking that. Very quickly, when I worked at Pearl Harbor Naval Shipyard, and my office was a Connex box, the only way that was allowed by Pearl management was because it was not a permanent structure. That's over in Hawaii. I granted East Lyme in Hawaii, slightly different.
Not much.
Are Connex boxes considered permanent structures, given that they kind of have a 20-year expiration date before they fall apart? And they can just be kind of landed there by 18-wheelers and picked up. And what's the definition?
Definition of a permanent structure. I'd have to look it up, probably per the building code, I think they'd have a definition. We don't have one in our zoning regs. We have a definition of structure.
Well, I think for all intents and purposes, there's that canopy between that's pretty solid. I would say that you could consider that square footage wise
As a structure.
as a structure.
960 square feet.
Right.
That's what I did before.
Yes, exactly.
So I'm trying to find the footprint of that whole structure.
Yeah.
It's actually greater than 12 by 40.
Right.
So it's almost 1,000 square feet.
So our definition of structure is anything constructed or erected, the use of which requires a location on, under, or above the ground, or attachment to something having location on the ground.
So there's no length of time? Okay.
The length of time, the 3-year things in the statutes. So that's all I have for my report. Correspondence, we have none. I think Kristen already mentioned the POC for the month, so yeah, I invite you all to join our next meeting.
So I have some thoughts before we finish. Regarding the FOI request for the inland wetlands, I feel the town should provide volunteer committee members a town email for the purpose of supporting volunteer activities in town. Committee members volunteer their time for the benefit of the town. With the increase in legal cases involving the town and various committees, the incidence of FOI requests has increased as well. These FOI requests place an undue burden on committee members and should be supported by the town. If committee members were provided town email addresses, the town IT administrator could support the FOI request and relieve the committee members of a task outside of the boundaries of their service.
So, Phyllis, just a question. Are you saying that you think all committee members, agency members, or people who volunteer on the different agencies
Well,
and boards in town?
I guess it
have
would be
a
their
email?
prerogative. You can have this if you want it.
It's not a bad idea.
It just, it takes a lot of time. First of all, it takes a lot of time, and I remember the list had like attorneys, and we're volunteers. We're not getting paid for this.
Yeah, it takes hours.
If I'm a
to get that
secretary
stuff
or
done.
Gary, you can sit down on town time and do the work. I can't.
Right.
And I just don't think it's fair, and I think going down the road, I see more of these coming through.
It's like second
So
one.
what I was gonna say is, recently, I think it was last month, they just gave, I think it's just the Board of Selectmen, we just got, town emails, and we have been getting FOIA requests. And
Yeah.
it's, what we do is, basically acknowledge receipt of it, and then after that, it really has to go through the town council, because, they have to deal with it. But on the other hand, I'm also required to go through my individual emails and pull out whatever is asked for in these requests and then send it to town council. But I can bring that up to the Board of Selectmen, if that's something that, is it just this, commission?
I would note, in my discussions with Kevin, he's indicated that members could get a town email address.
Okay.
May help relieve some of that, but I think there was a cost of, I think it was $5 a month. I'm not sure what that cost was, but I can certainly find out. That's something that, I guess we can work with Kevin in next year's budget, maybe budget for it and say, X amount
For
of
each
members.
member?
We probably can pay for it out of the budget that we currently have for each member. And it's $60 a year for each member,
Yeah, but like,
maintain an email address. So that would, potentially
Yeah.
be easier.
Yeah.
service agent.
I mean, I have to wonder, if I was gonna do something not legal, I wouldn't be doing it through my email. If I'm getting a payoff,
such
it's
a-
not through my email.
So it's also though, just so you know, you probably already know, but you are not supposed to be,
Deleting.
emailing is supposed to be just like setting up the time for the meeting and,
Yeah, that's it.
extraneous
That's all
things,
ever.
nothing
Nothing.
substantive should be talked about on an email, because then it becomes, public hearing,
Yes.
it's,
Mhm.
subject to the Freedom
For the
of
record.
Information Act.
Yep.
Having said that, I received, Freedom of Information Act, and they want every email regardless of what it's about, so, me saying I will be at the meeting, I have to,
Well, that's just it. It gets so cumbersome to go through, like, I'll be there, and don't forget the sidewalk is at 9, and going through all those emails, and then
yeah.
I can't find an easy way to upload to Dropbox, so I'm individually saving emails as PDF and then going back, and it just
Yeah.
takes forever. And the amount of time it takes to do that for what purpose, as volunteers, to have to go through when,
Well, the person who is actually submitting the FOI requests, typically they're using is they're looking for ex parte communication that would benefit them,
So I'll bring it up to the Board of Selectmen.
yeah, if there's some way to kind of alleviate the time constraints it takes for us to go through all that, would be great.
That said, we are still working on the FOI request. It was quite large. I'm still working on compiling my list of emails. And as is Jen and Karen and the rest of the staff downstairs, we involve pretty much everyone. So we're working on that. We retained Mike Carey from Sussman Shapiro to help advise us on this FOI request. So we do have counsel under contract that we can consult if we need. That said, John Casey is still representing us on the other 2 cases. And we definitely, I don't know if you wanted to talk to Kevin about the email.
Yeah, I can add, I'm not attending tomorrow, but the following meeting I can, I can bring it up
I'll
to
probably-
the Board of Selectmen.
I don't know if I'll see him tomorrow, but maybe Thursday.
Okay, so if you want to talk to him about it, that's fine.
If that's something, is everyone interested in that email? And I could just say, hey, Kevin, let's try to work this out, where we get everyone and take it out of the budget. Ideally.
Yeah, how does it cost that much money?
I don't know why email.
You're like,
It's, guys are getting ripped
Yeah.
off.
I mean,
I have other emails that I don't.
I set up an email, I don't pay
Because
anything.
it's through Microsoft.
Oh,
Right,
crap.
and you're
Office.
paying, and every time we set up a user, it's
It's like a
So
user
should we
for
all
the
just
whole
send
system, but then you're like, we're like part of that.
eastlymeadlandwetlands@gmail.com.
It's ridiculous. They can just set up a user
Right.
through Outlook, you
Use that
just
one.
through all of Microsoft.
I could email to one and you could all.
There's gotta be a way.
There is, someone's missing something.
Well, I mean,
log
even if
in and
we,
share the password.
I don't know, maybe we even just individually get our own Gmail and then just use that for correspondence with town.
Yeah, that's free.
I don't know.
So that's up to you, what email you want to use, if you want to do that. That's an
If the
option
cost
to
is
you.
an issue.
Well, that's what I did when I was on like Board of Finance in the wetlands, is I had one email and that was only for, you know, the Board of Finance and in the wetlands. I have one for Board of Selectmen and, you know, I have other emails for like my work and personal and whatever, but I keep it completely separate.
That's smart.
Yeah, so that, I mean, that's something you might want to do.
Well, when I got first FOI'd, then I created a folder. Every time Jen sent me something, and whatever I did, I put it in there. So now it was easier. I just have to do it.
Yeah, I could
Makes sense.
find it all, but just up the
Yeah, but then that
PDF
transfer
savings.
thing sucks.
Yeah, you just end up with a folder tree that's like, at least I do. I find that the meetings, it can, before it becomes FOI. And even that isn't necessarily, you know,
Yeah.
I'm not sure on the Freedom of Information Act, what I've heard is we're supposed to retain our emails, like almost indefinitely.
Yeah.
And I don't know how we do that because the mailboxes are just so long.
True.
So,
Yeah, and then each one of us submits the meeting sidewalk news, and you just get it. So they're getting the same emails over and over and over.
Yeah.
yeah.
Sounds like a waste of a lot of people's time.
So I'm supposed to be keeping like this email that,
Yeah.
So Microsoft locked Outlook to 20 different email
So
accounts.
for the new members, you have the advantage of not having received many emails. So for the few that you might have received while you've been on the commission, that should be relatively easy for you. And obviously with Diane and Nancy, you've got just a couple, but starting maybe with a new email address completely, and I'll resend to that might be a good idea. And I can follow up with Kevin, like I said. But I agree, it's onerous, it takes a lot of time, and when you have a million other things to do, it's the last thing you want to do. Like, and in my opinion, you know, towns do nothing malicious here.
Yeah.
Doing their jobs.
Right. All right. On that note, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Do I hear a second?
A second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank you.